Good afternoon, members of the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. My name is Evan LeBrun. I live in Portland, and I'm here to speak in support of LB 1401 and LB 1380 because they both work toward the tremendously important goal of ending marijuana prohibition in Maine. Now, I have no intentions of claiming that marijuana is a safe substance. In fact, to the contrary, I see a tremendous social cost of marijuana use in this state and in our country. However, this cost comes not from the impact of marijuana users on our society, but rather from the oppressive force of marijuana prohibition. Ending marijuana prohibition is not merely about allowing adults to use a substance safer than alcohol, it's more importantly about righting a social wrong. Now, though it's a difficult number to quantify, I urge you all to consider how many talented and intelligent people have been made ineligible for good jobs in this competitive market as a result of past marijuana charges or convictions. Certainly, had the marijuana use of our past 3 American presidents resulted in encounters with law enforcement, they never would have held public office. Now, how many of those working in our state legislature today would not be here had their past or current marijuana use resulted in such an encounter? How many Mainers and Americans would want to make this world a better place, had the potential to do so diminished because they used a drug the World Health Organization has declared to be safer than alcohol? But of course, a further social injustice of marijuana prohibition is not merely the effects of being charged with a marijuana-related crime, but the disparate nature in which these charges are handed down. A 2010 study by the American Civil Liberties Union found that black people in Maine are 2.1 times more likely to be charged with marijuana-related crimes than white people, despite using the drug at comparable rates. In a state where the Maine People's Resource Center has found that the average black Mainer earns 46% less than the average white person in Maine, the heavy fines and criminal charges associated with marijuana use can be devastating on black families. As a state, we should be doing everything in our power to help those in need, and instead, we spend almost $9 million in 2010 enforcing marijuana possession laws that serve to further disenfranchise black communities. Such a large economic and human cost for the enforcement of unjust marijuana laws seems especially misguided when considering the potential tax revenue a well-regulated marijuana industry could generate for Maine. Though both bills propose a different tax rate for marijuana sales, they would both undeniably generate millions of dollars for our state. What is currently an unnecessary expenditure in a tight state budget could easily become a profitable resource for our state, providing money for our often underfunded schools and other worker programs. How could one reasonably believe that denying our state such a resource is justifiable? But there are countless other reasons that the illegality of marijuana hurts our state and our neighbors. I hope that you all will at least consider the tremendous social costs of prohibition before casting your votes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next is Hillary Lister. Let's see, Hillary Lister. We have room for more people if they're down in the center. Christy Terrio. Murray, last name's Murray? Okay, come on up. Oh, Nick.
Yes.
That's it, very good.
No worries.
Welcome.
Senator Rosen, Representative Fowler, I appreciate your time, and the committee appreciate your time hearing our testimony today. I live in Portland, and I figured as a recent graduate of college and less recently of high school, I could shed some light on the availability in schools and the problem I see with that. I want to applaud the members of York High School that have chosen to live a chemical-free life, because that's very important. Like myself, I would advocate the same thing for any high school or any minor. And that's really the main issue of regulating marijuana, I think. The black market for marijuana exists in our high schools and our middle schools because of the lack of regulation. Drug dealers don't ask for ID, and they'll just take whatever money is there, and it doesn't matter what the state or the mental state or the age of any person who wants 5 limits. For me, that's the biggest problem with prohibition and the lack of regulation, because we enable risk-prone individuals to make profit in an environment that's dangerous, and we force peaceful, otherwise law-abiding people into a marketplace that is dangerous as well, with potentially dangerous product. For me, for education of the youth, we can't do this without some sort of regulation. We can't do this under prohibition. We've seen that tobacco use rates and alcohol use rates. Tobacco over the last 40 years has decreased among youth. It's because we've been upfront, we've been honest with youth, we've had honest drug education, and we've had an actual regulated market that shows that this behavior is for adults and not for kids. And obviously the facts present themselves, where cigarettes are very harmful for adults and even children. But it's not a far-fetched notion that we have certain behaviors designed for adults and designed for kids in terms of driving, in terms of purchasing other foods and other things. In terms of the higher THC levels, I think that this is a product of the scientific advancements made in the medical marijuana industry, the same advancements that have brought us the CBD medicinal effects, the myriad effects of non-psychoactive chemicals in marijuana, like cannabidiol, CBD, as well as others. So this is just an effect of this science, and that's why we need regulation, so we can have this scientific discussion. Under prohibition, under federal prohibition, there's been a lot of data and information and scientific studies involved in this. And I think if we take a step back and really look at this logically, we can see that higher potency of THC, which is a non-addictive, non-psychoactive substance, non-addictive and non-toxic substance, is the psychoactive substance in marijuana. But we've seen that the science has shown us that it is not something that is toxic, like alcohol or pharmaceuticals or even tobacco to the body. So I appreciate your time, and my time is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sam Pelletier. Representative Davitt, to answer your question 12. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Senator Rosen. Thank you, Representative Fowl, and members of the committee. I have, over the past couple of years, done some volunteering for the Marijuana Policy Project, and that's given me a great opportunity to talk to a lot of voters specifically about this issue. Talk to a lot of voters. And overwhelmingly, their response has been, please, no more Maine politics. But those voters that did engage and did say what their real concerns were about this, it's almost always about the teen use issue. What do we do about the teen use? And that's a very legitimate problem, and I think everyone in this room agrees that people under 21 shouldn't be using marijuana. What we haven't brought up is the fact that we have, as a country and a society, made a lot of incredible progress on teen alcohol use, on the way, and on adult alcohol use. The number of people who die in alcohol-related driving accidents has been cut about in half per population since the early 80s, according to the National Institute of Health. And we have reduced tremendously the amount of our kids who, at least self-reported, claim that they drink and drive. So we know that there's strides that have been made, and we didn't make those strides by punishing adult users. We made those strides through regulation and through education and through being honest. Honesty is very important. It's a conversation that many of our parents had with us when we were 14, 15 years old. Alcohol is for adults who use it responsibly. Do not drive on alcohol. Do not get into a car with someone who has been using alcohol. And I think that that kind of honesty is important, and we cannot have that conversation with our children about the fact that marijuana is for adults who use it responsibly. We can't have that conversation while we have dishonest policy. And our policy is dishonest because our policy says that marijuana is more harmful than alcohol, and that's not true. We don't see with marijuana the links to violence. We don't see the links to cancer. We don't see all of these terrible problems linked with alcohol. And when our laws say that marijuana is worse than alcohol, then we are telling lies, at least through government, through our legal statute, to our children and teenagers. And if we want them to listen, when we say that marijuana should not be used by teenagers, that it's bad for developing brains, that it's a very bad idea to drive a car on marijuana, then we need to meet them halfway and be honest about policy. It would be much more honest policy to say that marijuana is no more harmful than alcohol. Thank you.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you. you. I'm sorry. I just didn't get your name and if you were affiliated with the group.
My name is Sam Pelletier, and I have previously been affiliated with the marijuana policy project.
Thank you.
Zachary. No Zachary. Diana Nelson. Mike Sweeney.
Let me text them.
Okay, well, I'll do the next one. Daryl Boudreau. He's here.
I'll assume I don't need to sign in.
You're all set.
Thank you. My testimony is short, so I'm going to take just a second here and pontificate a little bit. I'm new to this process. I've only been here just a couple of times, and I'm learning a lot. I'm learning that there are a lot of people that have their opinions, and they'll skew statistics to work in their favor. A lot of the cited statistics were intentionally given to you as percentages, having to do with the Rocky Mountain statistics that we're talking about. I apologize for getting the name not correct on that, but they intentionally just reported the percentages of the changes, not the actual numbers, because the numbers of deaths were less than 40 or so, but it sounds a lot more terrifying when you hear that the percentage went up by 10 or 15%, and just like there were a few deaths more this year than the previous year. I'm going to go ahead and just give you what I have here on my written testimony. I wrote this testimony to show support of the existing medical marijuana system that we are currently operating under. I'm either for nor against LD 1380 or 1401, insofar as it does no harm to our existing system. Maine has been looked at as a model for other states to follow when it comes to our medical marijuana system, and if we are to legalize marijuana for all users, I would like to think that we can be a model there as well. We can look at the other states that have had a medical program before they created their recreational laws, and we can see the mistakes that were made. With this knowledge, I would hope that we could avoid risking our top-rated medical marijuana program in a rush to legalize recreational marijuana. There are many groups offering ways to get us fully into a legalized state, and I would ask that you be sure to look carefully at each and every one of them before jumping on the first option that comes across your desk. So in summary, I'm neither for nor against 1401 or 1380, provided that they do not interfere with our existing medical marijuana laws.
Thank you very much. Are you Diana?
No, I'm not. I was just hoping to get it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Bob Howe?
He's here.
And what is your name?
My name is Mike Sweeney. I'm from Cape Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Rosen, Representative all members of the committee. I've been sitting in VLA all afternoon, and I thank you for the opportunity to get out of there for a couple of minutes. I wanted to come here today and speak in support of the legislation that your committee is considering. I'm sure that you've had a lot of thoughtful testimony today, and I won't try to duplicate any of the strong points that can be made to talk about the merits of this legislation. Instead, I'll just tell you a real quick story about a conversation I had yesterday afternoon with a person who works at my mechanics. I was having my car fixed. The car was not going to be done in time. He was driving me home with the promise that he would have my car at my house in the morning. And I told him how important it was that I have my car at my house in the morning, because I was coming to Augusta to testify for a couple of important bills, most importantly the marijuana legalization bill. And he shared with me the story that he is currently using marijuana under a medical, for a medical reason, but he does have some friends who are using marijuana under different circumstances, and how they worry about perhaps being caught with a small amount and having that affect their record. you know, he was telling me that it would be so much more fair and so much easier for he and his friends to have this prohibition against use of marijuana taken away. And this is an excellent vehicle to do it. There are a lot of common people out there, everyday people, who are not going to get an opportunity to come here and testify in front of your committee today, but they're telling their stories to me. They're telling their stories to people like Representative Russell, and we're here today to relay their stories to you in hopes that you will do the right thing and vote this bill ought to pass. And I thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Victor Verdanis. No Victor. Guy.
Number 40.
And Lauren. Glenn Peterson. Yep. Tim. Betsy Sweet. Jana. Are you Jana?
I'm here representing Jenna's agency, Jenna Maynard.
Yes.
Yes.
And you're the last one on the list. Welcome.
Hi.
We adore you already.
Distinguished committee members, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Sophie Gabriel. I am the Director of Public Education for NAMI Maine. I'm turning in our position statement for both of these pieces of legislation, but I'm also here on a personal matter to also share a story from my lived experience. I'm the sister of an individual who has experienced a substance use disorder since the age of 10, also co-occurring with a severe and persistent mental illness. I think that it's interesting when I hear individuals who say that they are, that no one is hurt by marijuana use or addiction to marijuana doesn't exist. And it's interesting because in my line of work advocating for individuals with mental illness, we often see, or I often see on a regular basis, people kind of change how they're stigmatizing views towards mental illness or what they are as they get to know someone who has a mental illness, or as a family member becomes diagnosed, or as they themselves become diagnosed. And I think that it's really interesting that that the same thing happens when someone knows someone who has been hurt by a marijuana addiction. Typically, when I hear someone say that it doesn't hurt people, it means that they don't know someone who has been hurt. I can say that my siblings' substance use definitely was precipitated by a need for self-medication. But the problem is that once he did become involved with a medical team to try and treat his severe and persistent mental illness with prescription medication, it didn't produce the same high on his young brain that was developing that the marijuana did. So he opted not to use prescription medication, which started a 2-decade-long struggle with self-medication that increased to and escalated to use with methamphetamines, heroin, cocaine, methadone, to the point where he's overdosed more times than I can tell you. He's had involvement with the criminal justice system, and he's had severe issues with trying to find his place in this world. And as a family member, that's been really challenging to watch. But I think what's been more challenging is that my parents did everything right when we were kids. They tried to get him involved with mental health professionals, but they wouldn't see him because he had uncontrolled drug use. And the drug treatment programs wouldn't treat him because he had unmedicated mental illness. So that's where he ended up falling through the cracks, which is challenging for me in an advocacy position today, working every day to try and assist people in this capacity, because I still see that happening, because our resources are so limited because of our fractured system. So I stand here as a family member, but 100% in agreement with the opposition that my agency is taking, as I oppose it myself as a private citizen. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if you would like my executive director, Jenna Maynard, to be available for the work session, I'm sure she'd be happy to.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did I miss anyone that was on the list?
Wasn't on the list.
Yeah, don't look for anyone. Okay. That ends the public hearing. Thank you.